So we thought when we looked at it that it did not contain that kind of safeguard, those kinds of safeguards and protection. And it made no provision and imposed no obligations on the company to provide us with the kind of information that we listed earlier. And we were demanding that information in respect of the 8 or 9 companies that we saw as affiliates of Sewang Model.
My final question to you is, the two gentlemen, Mr. Antonio Bailey and Mr. what's his name? Mr. Justin Francis.
Junior Francis.
Junior Francis.
Junior Francis. You did mention that some level of due diligence was done on them in Grenada. And one was associated with global network providers. That's as much you can tell us. Who led the due diligence in Grenada? If anybody want to find out about me, the quickest thing, they take a phone book and they call the next trick, and anybody could know. Who led the due diligence on the Grenada end? And have you heard from the London liaison since the arrest?
I'm not quite sure that I can say who led it, because all that we're doing is checking on these names, or checking on the persons, or asking questions about their background. But even if I were to hear, and I do not intend to suggest that here, but even if I were to hear that Mr. Bailey is questionable, and he brings to Grenada some persons who I meet, and at that first meeting, I have no reason to doubt their integrity at that first meeting, notwithstanding any problems that Mr. Bailey may have. It then becomes my responsibility to do the search on those persons and to look further. As I said earlier, if we were to simply turn our backs on potential investors and it turned out to be a good deal, it turned out to be legitimate money of $2 billion that were going to be invested somewhere, and those monies ended up going to Jamaica or Barbados or St. Lucia and be invested in good projects, and Grenada got nothing, somebody would look to crucify me. If, on the other hand, so I have to strike a balance between exploring those possibilities but protecting the interests of the state. And that's what we did.
I've got...
No. Since the return, yes. Since the arrest, no.
What was the nature of that?
The nature of the communication was expressing frustration that we had not signed the document.
I just got some quick follow-up questions. I promise I won't be long. We know that Mr. DeRiggs is in the ministry. He's under the Economic Development Unit of the Ministry of Finance, so we can understand his reason for going to Taiwan. Mr. Roberts, however, is not part of government like in any official capacity. So what capacity did he go to Taiwan?
Well, he went in his personal capacity as an emissary of the government. You see, the truth is that governments appoint people, emissaries, to carry out tasks on its behalf from time to time. The intention was that Mr. DeRiggs would not have gone. The intention was Vincent Roberts would not have gone. We had actually approached first of all, a businessman, an accountant by profession, and said, can you please go? The answer was initially yes, then some difficulties came up, he could not go. And then we approached 2 other persons. I think you know now that they were attorneys, yes? Those 2 persons, again, intended to go. It was not intended that they were going as anything more than emissaries of the government, people appointed by the government who were not necessarily high-level government officials, but were sufficiently capable to engage in a fact-finding mission and come back to us with information.
And you've gotten a report from the team that as they return?
I'm sorry?
Have you gotten a report from the team since they returned?
Yes.
Okay.
Not a complete written comprehensive report, but we've had more than one report, in fact. Yes.
And the final, from me, what's the government's lesson coming out of this experience? What is government taking away from this experience?
The most important lesson coming away from it for me are these. One, we should not, we should not, there are negative lessons and positive lessons. It creates a number of teachable moments. The first is, I regret that the Prime Minister was involved in the signing of the MOU. I do not believe that Prime Ministers of a country should sign on to an MOU of that nature with a private company. It's really, in a sense, you don't need that. It's not necessary to bring the Prime Minister into that kind of scenario at all. That could easily have been signed by any functionary within the ministry, yes? So that is one lesson, I think, coming out, that we need to have very clear protocols within the government as to what documents will be signed by the state and what level officials should really be signing those documents. I think we need to develop a clear protocol to deal with those issues, because you don't want confusion and you don't want to do anything that can potentially compromise the integrity of the government or the nation, yes? The second important lesson, I think, that comes out of it is that it's a positive lesson. We must engage in due diligence. That at the end of the day, no matter how difficult things are for you, desperation is the worst companion for a desperate person. You must not be driven to a state of desperation unless you die. And I think it is fair to say that it is also, I've learned, and it reinforces my conviction, that to succeed in business, you have to be prepared to say yes about some things. And you also must have the courage to say no. You must be prepared to say yes on some things, because if you say no on everything, you will never have a deal. And while we wondered about the wisdom of going to Taiwan, we had to say yes so that we can explore if there were any possibilities there. But we had to have the courage to say no when we felt there were circumstances in there that did not adequately protect the interests of the government and people of Grenada.
One question, final question from me. If the charges against these people should be dismissed and they come back to the negotiating table, would you be willing to go forward with them?
I am not in a position to say that at this point. We are still, as I said, we are still waiting the results of some further searches. And we continue to, I'm sure we will get more information. As time unfolds, you may be bringing information to us that will help us to decide the question that you're asking.
Mr. Burke, while you're coming clean and being transparent, as you say, can you be a bit more transparent with the issue of the Prime Minister's signature? I know you said you don't agree with the Prime Minister signing the memorandum. I mean, the red flags, the understanding is that the Prime Minister was not supposed to have signed this document.
I'm sorry?
The Prime Minister was not supposed to have signed this memorandum of understanding.
What do you mean when you say he was not supposed? He's authorized to sign any document on behalf of the state. I'm saying I think it's a bad thing to do.
Right, but what
I'm not saying he was not supposed to.
Well, but what I'm asking you to comment on the circumstance of the Prime Minister signing against the fact that he was advised not to sign the memorandum of understanding.
Oh, he was advised? I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
But you cannot tell us the circumstance surrounding his decision to sign, like who advised him and that sort of thing?
No, you asked me that question before, and I advised you that I did not know, that I was not in Grenada. I really do not know the circumstances. If I had the information, I would give it to you. I didn't know that he was advised not to sign. So you have more information than I have on the issue.
Right, so you were out of Grenada, but can you confirm if red flags were raised at the cabinet level from very early?
No, I cannot confirm that.
You cannot confirm?
No. I think you've asked me that question before, and I answered you by saying that I did not attend any meeting in which red flags were raised by the cabinet in relation to this issue, or objections were taken by the cabinet in relation to this issue, nor have I seen any written records in the minutes of the meetings that suggest as such.